And the condition on the street now on the weekend is appalling. It is a state, I would call it, of a social civil war out there. People have come up to us. We were peacefully protesting with signs and handing out literature last weekend, both after the police. Some of us came after the police had their rally, as well as the next day on Sunday. People have been assaulted by other people. I had literature pulled out of my hand at different points. That's the state of affairs here. What you see here today on this side of it, voicing complaints about conduct of the police department and other things that were handled during that affair two weeks ago, this is the tip of the iceberg here. On the other hand, I think you folks need to know that there's a great deal of hostility out there among other people, and I hold the media largely responsible for that, as well as the city council. So, one example quickly about how the media is not telling this story. This is ridiculous. I came across this report on Sunday night. I checked it out on the web. The Chicago Tribune and New York Times noted that over the weekend, university students in Mexico City rioted to free the political prisoners here in the jail here. They're causing $650,000 worth of damage. I'm not going to say if it's right or wrong, but it's a simple fact. That simple fact was not reported, and other things were way over-reported in the last 2 days that were comparable. So there's essentially a blackout on related news that's international that affects what's going on in Seattle right now. And one thing I would like to ask specifically that the council address, two questions then that could be addressed and should be addressed at the next council meeting on Monday. Number one, I'm going to condense everything I was going to say. Number one, you don't have to wait to do fact-finding. This is a moral judgment about what was right in terms of certain behaviors that you have already seen on video. I want you to state, each of you, in the next council meeting, whether you think the conduct that you've already seen on video in these 2 days of testimony is acceptable conduct, morally. That's a moral statement. On the part of the police pulling off, for example, police pulling off masks off folks who are locked down and pepper spraying them in the face. That's one example. Number two, I would like you to address whether you think Ms. Pager Margaret Pager should be the next city council president. And I say that back because it has nothing to do with an absence today or last time. It has to do with votes on the civility agenda and specific votes on the noise ordinance. When we were fighting the noise ordinance, from my perspective, we were fighting it for the issue of peaceful assembly because it was not about noise. It was simply about whether people could be coming together in peaceful groups. Well, we've seen where we are now today here. We are at a state where it wasn't a fine without warning, it was firing on us without warning.
Ralph, I'm sorry, your time's up.
No, please, let's be respectful of each other. Because out there on the street right now, you need to be appreciative of how much great hostility there is from citizen to citizen now, and you folks need to know that.
Thank you. Ralph, Ann Kirkham is 101, Liz Guy is 102, Gary DeGraff is 103.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Ann Kirkham. I live in Seattle. I work for a local environmental nonprofit organization. I am also an anarchist. On November 30th, myself and hundreds of thousands of other people gathered in downtown Seattle to shut down the WTO. We wanted to show the world that the people oppose global corporate greed, that people stand for people, the environment, and all these things must come before profits, and that we're here to build a new world. We gathered at 7 a.m. on Capitol Hill, where I live, and marched downtown. By 10 a.m. we were at the Sheraton, I believe. I could never afford to stay there, so I don't really know much about it. We were at 6th and Union anyway. I saw the protest turn violent at 10 a.m. when a gang of masked individuals dressed all in black, whose only identifying insignia said police, started their violent tactics. I'm here to tell you what I saw. I saw the police do little dances of joy before they pepper sprayed people directly in their faces. When my friends and I scrambled to get away, we were gassed and shot at with rubber bullets. My friend Chris, who was next to me, was shot all up the back of her leg while trying to get away from the gas. We were doing nothing other than trying to get away from these chemical agents they were using. I saw an officer standing on top of one of those peacekeeper armored vehicles, those scary-looking Belfast-looking things, the ones I'm still seeing in my nightmares, shooting directly into the crowd, point blank. I saw countless acts of brutality by the police who were completely out of control, completely sadistic, completely evil. This went on all day. After the fifth and last time I was directly gassed, my lungs hurt so badly, I have asthma, that I couldn't take in a full breath. I had other symptoms, including onset of menstruation, which disturbs me pretty greatly. I still have a lung infection 2 weeks later. Still I'm not able to take a full breath, and still I'm not able to participate in my life activities. I still tense up every time I see a police car, and I'm still having nightmares. I want to see some accountability from the city and county for the brutality in the streets and the violation of our civil rights. I want those responsible to lose their jobs. After all, they are public employees, and we are paying their salaries. This includes the mayor. This includes the police. I sent a letter to the city council, CC'd a letter that I sent to the police department and to the mayor. This was on December 1st or 2nd, I believe. You guys should be getting it soon. I mailed it today. I have a degree in political science. I've studied political repression. I've studied police states all throughout time and space. It didn't really surprise me, but it still wounded me greatly inside. I still feel shocked from all this. But as we said on Tuesday, the whole world is watching. We're witnessing, and I believe this is only the beginning. Thank you.
My name is Liz, and I want to talk about some of the violence that occurred during the week of the Ministerial. It didn't make it onto the cameras and didn't make it onto the nightly news. And I'm talking about some of the violence that happened in jail where there are no cameras allowed and there are no rules, literally. I want to describe to you what happened to me and what I saw happen to a few other folks, but much more was perpetrated against people during those 4 days, just as has been perpetrated for hundreds of years against those incarcerated by the states. And there were maybe almost 1,000 political prisoners incarcerated during the Ministerial, but I want to know what other kind of prisoner is there in a capitalist police state like the one that we're living in? Because people are incarcerated because of economics, because of the violence perpetuated against them that they're trying to battle against. So let's keep that in mind, that I'm going to be talking about that week, but this violence is part of what's been happening for hundreds and hundreds of years, and it's happening right now. And I want to thank you all for also what you pointed out about other folks that are incarcerated currently. I also joined the march from Denny Park at about 7:15 a.m. on Wednesday, December 1st. I was pulled by my hair and dragged to the curb and later put into a pain compliance hold to drag me onto a bus. Our group was one of the first to be held, and we held out for over 10 hours refusing to be processed at Sandpoint until we saw a lawyer, which we never did. Eventually, we were forced to be booked, after which I learned that a group of 30 young women had been pepper sprayed directly into their faces as they sat on the floor singing Amazing Grace, ironically, because they demanded to see a lawyer before they were transported to the jail. They also were not allowed to see a lawyer, and several of them were left without medical attention after being pepper sprayed. They transported us to the jail, and while we were waiting to be booked, I watched as they pulled an older woman back by the hair like this and pushed her down the hall with no provocation whatsoever. And at that moment, I decided I would cooperate in no way whatsoever with them. So I sat down. And because I refused to comply with my own unlawful incarceration, I was first dragged into a holding cell and stripped of most of my clothes by male and female guards and left for about an hour and a half. From there, I was strapped into a chair and wheeled to solitary confinement, where I was forcibly stripped of the rest of my clothes and pushed down and left naked on the floor, and I spent the next 16 hours in solitary. As I persisted in demanding to call a lawyer, the guard informed me that I had no rights and would lose my privilege to use the phone entirely if I didn't shut up. Eventually, they put me in with the general population, but 12 hours later, they came for me again. I refused to leave, and after several attempts, they forced all of us to our cells, and 3 guards came in, and at that point, I'd removed my clothes because I figured I could at least stall them that way because they couldn't come in. They did anyway. They forcibly replaced my clothes and pushed my roommate's face into the floor, and I later learned they bruised her nose, and she was left for 4 hours without medical attention, after which they informed her that a broken nose was not a medical emergency, and the only reason she was ever able to get to see a doctor is because a band lawyer happened to be in a waiting room where she was placed while they cleaned the blood off of her floor. It should be clear.
Liz,
as others have said, the brutality of the prison industrial complex is not a new issue, and the role of the prison industry and the police force in incarcerating those who challenge the system can really not be disputed. But what I want to know is, what are we going to do to challenge the system now? Because they will continue to use the system against us, as they have since the beginning of resistance. I mean, we need to do something now.
Liz, you're at the end of your time. I'm sorry.
Right. So that's my question to you. And also to us, I mean, I'm done. So I just want to know what we're going to do about that, because they will continue to use that to incarcerate us every time we resist until we take down the prison industrial complex. Thank you.
Number 103 is Gary DeGraff. Gary DeGraff, followed by Jenny Nycarthy, and Mark Bader, I guess, 105.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity to speak out. I'm going to comment on some personal history. My family moved out west here to Seattle in the early 1900s, about 1914. My grandfather was a Seattle fireman. My father was a Seattle Fire Lieutenant, Station 11. And Norma was a retired police officer. Uncle Virgil also was a retired police officer. When I was young, I admit I was a cop wannabe. I applied for the written test, the physical. I went before the oral board. I was not accepted. I didn't realize there was affirmative action and quotas that needed to be met. I'm not sure if that's why they made their decision. But as far as WTO is concerned, I was there. I had done that. I also participated in the protests of the late 60s, early 70s. This was after I had tried to become a Seattle police officer. And while I was on the streets of the University District, one thing I don't think the police understood was that I was down there not only to protest, but to also back them, because I don't like to see my city torn apart. I'm very proud of my community. I bumped into an old friend on the street corner, and since I didn't continue moving, which the police wanted, I stopped for a moment to say hello. That this little short cop came up and whacked me upside the knee with his nightstick and told me to move along. I was not seriously hurt, so I moved along. That kind of developed some attitudes of anti-government, anti-authority, and so since I wasn't accepted in the police force, I joined a motorcycle gang. And as life progressed, I felt persecuted by certain local police officers, harassed, and it finally escalated to where I got mad at a judge up at the Snohomish County Courthouse, and he had me surrounded by 7 officers. I dropped 4 of them to the floor, putting a big knot on one of their heads. But I realized my mistake. They were trying to do their job. I jumped the gun. I eventually apologized to that sergeant that I injured, and he forgave me. And I forgive that officer that whacked me with a nightstick on the knee. I have, in my age, I have learned the power of forgiveness. And they have a very difficult job to do out there, and as far as calling for resignations, I see oftentimes the public, what I did, I could have suffered 10 years in prison for what I did. Oftentimes I see with authorities, they seem to just get their hands slapped. I didn't see Mayor Schell or the chief shoot anybody. I forgive them. But I did see officers on the news, an officer kicking a man in the groin. I don't feel that he should ever be a person in authority babysitting adults.
Jerry, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Also, Merry Christmas.
Jenny McCarthy, my neighbor. Welcome.
Thank you. Jenny McCarthy. through that. Okay, this is all I need. This thing. I have to read this or I'll take too long. I want to thank you, Nick, for conducting the community meeting, organizing it a few minutes ago, because I think that did help. And that brings me process. This doesn't count my time. But I suggest that we continue really using, these meetings may go on into the next millennium, and using the sign, the deaf sign for applause. And I don't know the sign for boo hiss, but I suggest this so that we can save some time. Okay. Monday night and Tuesday night, in my role as a National Lawyers Guild volunteer legal observer, I was impressed at the sight of hundreds of police officers standing hour after hour in cold rain, exercising remarkable discipline and self-control. Problem: I asked 2 or 3 dozen of them their names and badge numbers. 4 would tell me who they were. Message: I do not choose to be held responsible for my behavior. That's what that means. And that's institutional, I believe, police policy. Although the Washington State Patrol was an exception, King County and Seattle were consistently, except for those 4 people, would not answer. Washington State Patrol had numbers on their helmets, at least. That was something. Policy. Tuesday at 5:20 p.m., without warning, police moved west on Pike Street, lobbing tear gas, pepper spray, and percussion bombs towards 4th Avenue, where demonstrators sat in the intersection. Most protesters stood and quickly started to leave, as did I. As I backed away, I observed an officer smacking a young man on the leg with his baton. As he struck 2 others, I tried to photograph him. Another officer stepped forward and, with a quick jab to my chest, pushed me down on the sidewalk. Wednesday night on Capitol Hill, I tried to write in my notebook as I backed away from charging officers. One pointed his gun at me, and I turned to get away faster, but hesitated a moment because a tear gas canister was exploding right in front of me. The officer roughly pushed me along the sidewalk directly into the tear gas. There is presumably a new police profile out. 72-year-old white female, may be wearing white National Lawyers Guild shirt and green cap, may be armed with ballpoint pen, 3x5-inch notebook, and unconcealed camera. Dangerous. Well, I saw a lot out there, 12 hours a day, 3 days, 6 hours, a couple more days. And our mayor, as well as others, have called for a healing to begin. For many years, I worked as an advocate for women who have been battered by intimate partners. Many of my colleagues and I learned, along with the endangered women, that it is not advisable to forgive or to begin a healing process too soon. Reconciliation has to follow accountability, and that requires several difficult steps. What I learned there can be translated into the police department, something like this. Principles, first, admission of culpability, restitution insofar as possible, a clear, specific, feasible plan for reform so that the violence will not be repeated, and implementation of the beginning of the reform. These principles apply to the police malpractice. The first time I remember hearing communities call for independent reviews of police conduct was in the 50s or 60s. I remember around 68, a young man, maybe named Reese, a 16-year-old black male, was shot and killed by a police officer. Big to-do in the black community, and with some whites also, quite a few of us actually. What happened? Police said, oh, internal review. I think there was something in the 50s. I have a hunch that Larry Gossett will remember the series of these events, because as I recall, Larry Gossett was becoming a nonviolent direct activist at that time as a high school student. And so that history means that this is extreme, but it's not an exception. And we need to have a truly independent police review board that is ongoing all the time. Not for this, because a lot of us white folk, a lot of us middle-class folk got in the fray, but all the time, so that people who are normally marginalized will always get some kind of protection. My question, what is the role of the police guild? Who controls them? What kind of power do they have? I'm told that they're, along with Sidron, a big block in the road to any kind of independent commission. My other questions are, when and where will the list of questions we have here be published? What is your time frame for answering them, and where and what form will that take? And after this accountability process takes place, I hope then we will begin the healing and some reconciliation. Thank you.
Ginny, could you leave your remarks? Could you leave the text to your remarks? That'd be great. Mark Bader, let me congratulate everybody here. We're halfway. And let me thank the people that are trying to stay under the 3 minutes, because it makes my job a little easier. Not that that's what I'm here for, but when you go 5 minutes, you're taking 2 minutes from other people, I'm afraid. So let's try to keep it shorter. And hurrah for all of us for getting this far. Thank you. Go ahead.
A great American once said, when you make peaceful protest impossible, you make violent protest inevitable. Some of you may know who I'm quoting. While the mayor would have us believe that the city's use of extraordinary force was a response to window breaking and a few instances of looting, the actual order of events on November 30th indicate otherwise. The first violence of the day occurred at approximately 10:30 in the morning on Union and 6th outside the Sheraton. There was tear gas canisters launched into the middle of a group of protesters sitting in the middle of the street. Rubber bullets and pepper spray were also used. This was amply documented by the numerous photographers and videographers on hand. This attack by the police upon a group of protesters engaged in nonviolent civil disobedience occurred hours before a single window was broken. And yet the mayor, with a skillful sleight of hand, tells us that the police's heavy-handed tactics were only in response to window breaking and other mischief. The mayor has gotten enormous political mileage out of that broken glass and has used those broken windows to justify his policy of wholesale police violence. In dozens of nonviolently civil disobedience protests around the country, the police have responded by making mass arrests and in an orderly fashion escorting protesters onto buses. The most recent of those occurred in Fort Benning, Georgia, at the Army School of the Americas. Why wasn't this approach employed on those peacefully protesting on the morning of the 30th, instead of pepper spray, tear gas, and rubber bullets? Last week, I was surprised to read in the Seattle Post-Intelligencer that Sue Donaldson, who's not here, requested an undercover SWAT team to attend the last meeting we had at the library. The police refused to show up outside of their uniforms. They wanted to wear the uniforms. That, I guess, was the only hitch. Otherwise, we would have had a full SWAT team maintaining order at the last meeting. As you look around the room, you see any need for a SWAT team here. This speaks volumes of Ms. Donaldson's relationship to her constituents and does not seem to be a very productive way of moving from here on. The city's mishandling of the WTO protest was not a one-time only event to be dismissed as an aberration. Once you have created a scenario that resembles a police state, it doesn't go away by itself. If you think you can keep your heads low and let things blow over, your political future is in jeopardy.
Number 106 is Michelle Peterson. 107 is Mike Niendorf. 108, Linda Warren. 109, Brenda Lowe.
Okay, I want you to realize that something like this could very well happen again because of the brutality and because of closed doors happening with WTO. We are motivated and we are inspired to continue. So lots of movements are being inspired, and I was saying that earlier to some media, and they said, well, what's your movement? And I said, well, my movement is for enriching infinite education. I didn't go for amongst a specific group, but I went to be a peacekeeper because I have a lot of skills in de-escalating situations, and that's what I did. And I went and had a lot of success in calming people down that were completely irate and fighting, and I thought that was what democracy sounds like, when I would go and I would talk to them and show them what they were doing through words and show them a little mirror. And I'm not for Mayor Schell being ousted because
he would be replaced by Margaret Pagler. So I want to say that good luck to all of us if that happens. I do think he could use an unpaid vacation to go drift in the ocean and stargaze. And peacekeeping, nonviolence training. Olympia is pursuing doing nonviolence training at the urging of our citizens. I grew up in Olympia, Washington, and we're following up on that, and I hope you take us seriously with that. Cops' visible ID numbers, it needs to not be an ordinance, it needs to be a law. The last place I thought this would happen was Olympia, was Seattle. Yes, I am naive. My dad always was questioning me, how can I speak for others in foreign lands? Well, I can do it loudly, and I'm going to continue to do it loudly because this is not this is not a right-left thing, this is an up-down thing, and I continue to be on the bottom end of this economy, and I hope I always am because I'm going to be very very happy doing that. I don't want much else but my freedom. And you mentioned accountability at the last meeting. As you search for wrong and right doing, please keep the dialogue alive. Please approach people that you're trying to find out information from with a calm demeanor, or obviously you will with calm demeanor, but just keep the dialogue alive. The last meeting we communicated muffled warnings were given to us through the blowhorns. You also need to know that the warnings were that you would be dispersed. They were not that we would shoot you with rubber bullets and that we would tear gas you. And might does not make right. What would Jesus want? What would Jimi Hendrix want? They would want us to be here, and that's what we're going to continue to do. And the FBI released a study that said that 4 to 5 people could be dying from this interaction, so I don't know why we can claim oblivion. People do what they know how to do. That's what my granny always said. Well, that's why the Seattle police and all police need to have nonviolence training, and this is what democracy sounds like. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight and the dog. And I hope you guys got a good fight, because you got a long road ahead of you to bring us justice.
Mike Niendorf is followed by 108 Linda Warren, then Brenda Lowe, then Dorothea Knapp.
Okay, I'm going to keep this real short and sweet. Most of the things that I really want to say have already been said very effectively and much more eloquently than I could by the people who spoke at this meeting and at the previous meeting also. First off, I'd like to thank the council for sticking around and listening to all of this testimony, both this meeting and previous meeting also. The real issue that I really wanted to raise here, I guess the question I'd like to ask, I wasn't down there for the first day of the protest, but I was down there for the second, and this stems from my experiences there. I was at the Steelworkers rally down by the pier before the large group of about, I don't know, maybe 500 or 1,000 protesters left to go up towards Pike Place Market, and subsequently got gassed about 4 p.m. I ended up right at the back of that group, and as luck would have it, I ended up standing shoulder to shoulder with someone who appeared to be an undercover police officer because he was relaying crowd movement information over a small radio, and I assume that he was relaying it to the police. I can't imagine who else would be doing that. Be that as it may, it got the question running in my head, exactly how many undercover officers and from what agencies were involved in this. I saw on the news the first day, like I said, I wasn't at the protest for the first day, I watched a news crew from, I believe it was King 5, following around these people in ski masks and bandanas and all that as they smashed windows. You know, they're lugging around cameras. Well, I guess most of them are gone over there now, but large pieces of equipment, they're still able to follow these people around. It stands to reason that if there were undercover officers present, they were amply capable of doing the same thing, possibly even more so because they weren't weighed down by equipment. I'd like to know, basically, if there were any undercover officers present that day. I find it inconceivable that there weren't. And if so, where the hell they were, what they were doing. I will not speculate on that one. Basically, that's the full extent of the question I'd like to ask here. I'd like a full explanation of what the number of undercover officers that were present, what agencies they were from, and what their specific orders were. And I'd like full, immediate, and public disclosure of that. And I would just like to advise you that the people are watching, and we are not going to forget what happened. We are waiting for an answer to this and a lot of other questions. Thank you.
Linda Warren. I'm sorry. Are you Linda? I'm sorry. Are you Michelle? You're Brenda. Well, let's go for it. Thank you.
My name is Brenda Lowe. I've been a citizen of Seattle for 12 years, and I hold a business license for 8.5 years. And I want to thank you all for your fortitude in holding this hearing and staying here. But I want it to be clear that the little bit of discomfort that we're experiencing now is absolutely nothing compared to the people who put their lives on the line and tried to shut down the WTO. And we have to remember that while we're a little bit uncomfortable here. I was trained as a legal observer by the National Lawyer Guild, the purpose of which was to be a presence to minimize potential unrest and ensure the protection of people's civil rights regarding free speech by documenting potential abuses. We wore T-shirts emblazoned with the stating we were legal observers, and I and my colleagues received testimony from many people who experienced outrageous abuses of force. I first saw the riot police in riot gear attire on Sunday when they appeared suddenly on Pike and Fifth during the peaceful Global Exchange March downtown. I was doing my job as a legal observer by attempting to write down officers' names, badges, etc., and was not only unable to because none of them had any identification, but was also shoved by an officer who told me to get out of the way, who broke ranks from his phalanx because he, while I was trying to do my job and I was causing no harm. I was simply there with a pen and a pad of paper trying to get some identification. We received testimony that legal observers and medics were specifically targeted by the police with tear gas and rubber bullets. I'm not a lawyer by profession. For the last 8.5 years, I've been a licensed acupuncturist. In my role as an acupuncturist after the WTO Ministerial, in addition to symptoms associated with tear gas and rubber bullets, some of which one of my other colleagues is going to be attesting to, I treated people with post-traumatic stress disorder, people who were totally shocked by the brutality they encountered. As healers, we follow the dictum, first do no harm. And I want to ask, was it rational, was it moral, was it effective to escalate the response to nonviolent peaceful protests? Was there no other constructive response? I'd like you to take a lesson from the Seattle Fire Department, from Brian Dudowski, from Peter, Richard, and Nick for protecting our rights, from all the nonviolent protesters. I want to know who gave the orders to use over 20,000 canisters of tear gas, who gave the orders to target Victor Minetti, who were the undercover agents, what was the federal involvement. I believe in nonviolent protests. Howard Zinn stated that the nonviolent civil disobedience is the most powerful event of this century. But I have a very visceral response to the policy of force which gives rise to serious abuses. I'm the child of a Holocaust survivor, and I know that losing our rights slowly or overnight is not an abstract notion, but a real-world possibility. Paul Hawkins reminded us last week that history is a struggle of memory against forgetting. It is dangerous to legitimize and rationalize the use of force. Defend your rights before they completely evaporate. Exercise your rights of free speech. Demand full disclosure. Demand justice and accountability for all people while you still can.
Dorothea Knapp, Jen Domier, I guess it is.
Hi. Actually, Jen Domier is my friend, but she's not here. And I'm Dorothea Knapp, and I spoke last time, and so I was just going to go back in line, because I'm going to stay for the whole time, and I hope you guys do too.
So, Jen?
Please give me a new number. My name's Dorothea Knapp.
Well, we'll find it. It's going to be 209 or something like that. So, great. Let's go with Jen is next. Dan Mitchell, 112. Dan?
Hi, I'm Dan Mitchell, a resident of Seattle. And although the numbers in this room have dwindled considerably from hours ago, I couldn't be more honored than I am now to be in front of you people. And as far as the council members go, one of the prior speakers named those who voted for and against the no protest zone. Well, the future will tell me if I can forgive those who voted for the no protest zone with how you behave with these hearings and your investigation of the actions that took place during the WTO. And I'm also glad that Mr. Gossett is here, because I personally was not a victim of the Seattle police violence, but was personally a victim of the King County Sheriff's Department violence on Tuesday, November 30th. I was standing probably 2 feet away from a sheriff's deputy, just talking to him, actually empathizing with him. The guy looked exhausted. I was saying, you know, I know what it's like to stand there for hours on end. I was in the Army. I know what it's like to stand there and not be able to move. I said, it might be good if you just lifted one leg at a time. And I'm just talking to this guy in a gas mask. And then about 5, maybe 7 feet behind him, a guy raises a pepper spray canister, and I see a straight stream coming at me. It hits me in the face, and I went staggering blindly back. And I had the dubious distinction of being the first of thousands of people on 4th Avenue there to be gassed and pepper sprayed. And then after we were beaten back 1 block, we were back there for a couple of hours at that intersection. And then a young woman said, "Peaceful protest, peaceful protest." We were all down on the ground. 4 of us were covered up under my jacket. There was a sweep that came down the hill from the east. People got up to run. I got up to run, and when I took the jacket off my head, I don't know if they're sheriff's departments or what, but I was sprayed in the face by 2 directions at once. And then I later on that evening saw myself get kicked in the back on the news as I ran away, and I was shot by a rubber bullet. And I don't think there's been too much mention of the Washington State Patrol tonight either. I mean, their attitude just really appalled me. I saw one young woman lay a white carnation down in front of one of these individuals, and his response to that was he put his foot on the white carnation and ground it into the pavement. Actions like that just didn't help. And my time is up, but I just want to say one more thing. One individual earlier here said he was going to have scars for life. The young children that were up here earlier, you know, they ought to look at police officers as a source of security, but they can't do that.
Eric Bledsoe. 113 is Eric. 114 is Leslie DeLaba, I guess it is. 115, Robert Mason. 116, Diane Haynes.
Good evening. Thanks for waiting. It's a very rough draft. I'll do my best. At the beginning of this, we were asked to thank people that did things right. Thank you, Peter Steinbrück, for doing your homework on my free speech case months ago. Some of the things I have to talk about didn't exactly happen 2 weeks ago, but they're related. I'll try to be concise. Thank you to Lisa on your staff and yourself for giving me the time to talk to you about my free speech case. That's at Pike Market and also at Westlake at the Metro Tunnel. I'd like to thank Chief Stamper for giving me time to speak with him about this as well and the problems I've had with SPD down there. I'd like to thank Captain Ako and Carmen Best from Chief Stamper's office. Scott the Bike Police from the U District also. I'd like to thank Tom Robbins from LaConner, who wrote that the real problem is not the city administration or the city police administration, it's the police guild. So let's stay focused. I'd like to talk about Pike Market. Shelley Yap is gone. I guess they exported her to Seattle Center. But Mike, the head of security, is still there, and it's extremely repressive. I've been a professional musician for 30 years. I'm proud of that. I'm proud of my Gandhian pacifism. I talked to some very docile protesters a couple weeks ago about my free speech case at the market. Mike, the head of security at Pike Place Market, threatened to charge me with inciting a riot for doing that. I can't accept that kind of smear. I welcome the ACLU's help today. I welcome the National Lawyers Guild. I'm the person who was walking around downtown Wednesday singing "Love is All You Need." Pike Market is no island of mom and pop tranquility. It's more like a raft adrift on a sea of unaccountability. Excuse me, these are just scattered thoughts. I'm going to have to put them out here any way I can and get my time in. I was tear gassed. I believe there was no decent communication from the police about their expectation toward the crowd. I'd like to complain about Officer Rob McCurley at Pike Place Market for his constant humiliation and repression toward me, Officer Monzon for his constant humiliation and repression at Pike Market, and also when I have played at Westlake, Officer Gonzalez, who has threatened to put me in jail for playing at the Metro Tunnel at 3rd and Pine. I'd like to thank Jim Santangelo, the Teamsters representative who took my comments seriously about this. I'd like to remind everyone that Gandhiji and Dr. King would have been appalled by what they saw if they had seen what took place here 2 weeks ago. I think I've covered most of what I came to say. Thank you. Remember that censorship is un-American.
Thank you, Eric. Leslie? After Leslie is Robert Mason.
Good evening. Thanks, all of you and everyone who's stuck around. Excuse me. My name is Leslie Dalaba. I am a licensed acupuncturist practicing on Capitol Hill and a faculty member of the Northwest Institute of Oriental Medicine. I have been treating activists for several weeks leading up to and following the week of protests against the WTO. Almost all of these patients have some sort of respiratory condition, as can be expected, from stress, lack of sleep, exposure to the weather, and jail conditions. I am concerned, however, about a pattern emerging with patients who were exposed to gas used by police on Wednesday, December 1st, on Capitol Hill and in the Pike Market area. Most of these patients were vomiting blood directly after or the morning after exposure. My partner and I treated 7 such patients on Monday, December 5th, 5 days after exposure to this gas. I will read a brief description of their conditions at that time. 21-year-old female, main complaint, headaches daily, flushed and chilled with disorientation. 26-year-old male, main complaint, disorientation. Extreme fatigue, cough with chest pain increasing in discomfort since exposure. 22-year-old male, main complaint, burning eyes, pressure around the eyes, nausea, disorientation 10 times a day, brown and green phlegm. 19-year-old female, main complaint, cough with brown-green phlegm and specks of blood persisting, disorientation and burning eyes. 26-year-old female, main complaint, fever, headaches, chest pain, the skin peeled off her lips and off the palms of her hands after exposure. Disorientation, lethargy, and anxiety. 36-year-old male, main complaint, nausea, cough with green-brown phlegm, blisters on his wrists, hot flushes and dizziness. 19-year-old male, main complaint, chest tightness, disorientation, headache, painful, swollen tongue persisting. 5 days later, we saw the following 2 patients. 22-year-old female, main complaint, vomited blood on the 2nd and 5th day after exposure, delirium the 6th and 7th night with severe night sweats and vaginal bleeding. The morning of the 10th day after exposure, she experienced visual and auditory hallucinations with palpitations, anxiety, and confusion. 21-year-old female, main complaint, periodic numbness in the extremities, muscle twitches. One hand icy cold, the other feels burning hot. Anxiety and disorientation with hallucinations for 2 days following exposure. Dr. Kirk Murphy, working with Physicians for Social Responsibility in Los Angeles, has taken an interest in this situation. I am helping him gather information locally, as is the DAN office. If you have anybody you know who experienced this gas and is experiencing any persisting symptoms or had these sorts of symptoms afterwards, please call the DAN office or myself, 323-3277. And yes, I've been treating these people free of charge, as I will you.
Robert Mason, 115, followed by Diane Haynes, 116. And Tim Keyser. Any of those people here? Let me try again. Robert Mason, Diane Haynes, Tim Keyser, Michelle Wilson. I'm sorry, which one are you? 116, Diane Haynes, 117, Tim Keyser. Come on up.
My name is Tim Keyser. 1030, in my case against the city of Seattle, I'm seeking unspecified damages for being tear gassed at least twice by police and hit at least once by a projectile. I also suffered a serious asthma attack from Pine to Pike. I walked as the police force was stationed at Pike Street. They started in large numbers closing off Pike Street as I walked south to Union, the police stopped all the people from entering Union Street. Then, without warning, they started marching and forcing us to go west, throwing gas, pepper spray, and rubber bullets cans at us and hitting us. Then they took us from 3rd to 2nd, and I was gassed again. My eyes were burning, and I could hardly breathe. I then walked south to take a bus home. 2 days later, I went to the hospital because I could not breathe again. I'm still having a hard time breathing, and I inhaled so much gas I might never be the same. I want to know why. And about race, what is that another issue? This right here, I would like to show this. This is a grenade that was shot at me, thrown at me. And we must be free citizens with full human rights. We cannot let ourselves be slaves to global capitalism. Here, we're the hotels for the homeless and the Fifth Avenue Jail promised Friday night. Did the political prisoners that were also homeless get adequate housing like they were promised? And my last question is to all political prisoners, free. Are they free or are they accounted for? We need to know. We required an inspector to go through the jail on 5th and James Street and check all the cells for human violations and if their rights were denied. Tonight, 12/14/99. I'm starting my own organization. It's called the World Homeless Organization. Thank you.
Michelle Wilson is 118. Jennifer is 119. Bob Barnes, 120.
Thank you. My name is Michelle Wilson. I'm a Seattle resident and a Seattle public school teacher while I can afford to exist as such. I'm also a proud protester and can honestly say I've seen more violence inside school walls than I've seen by any protester on the streets of Seattle. I'm glad to be here, speak my voice, and give thanks. I'm thankful no one was killed during the event. I'm thankful we shut down the WTO. I'm thankful for everyone who has stood up and taken action for what we believe is right and did not harm anyone in the process. I'm thankful for the global wake-up call. Waking up to police brutality is not pleasant, especially when you consider our domestic assault is mild compared to what our forces do abroad. Waking up to U.S. media's distortion of these events has been a cruel joke, to put it mildly. Waking up to the power of the people has been inspirational. If we don't want a stadium or two, don't build them in our city. If we don't want the leaders we've elected, let's get new ones. I've met plenty of leaders on the streets of Seattle lately. If we want our city core to be truly public and civic, let's shut down these corporate-run crap factories, form our public spaces. I know what democracy looks like. I cannot shut my classroom door and wait for what is being rationed out to me any longer. I refuse to be told when to go home, or worse, when to go shopping. My question is, can we keep the spotlight on Seattle by leading through the actions of our citizens, or are we going to try to dismiss these events and suppress our opportunity for real-world change? I say there ain't no power like the power of the people, because the power of the people can't stop.
Jennifer, Bob Barnes, and Jeremy S-I-M-E-R, Simer, I guess it is.
Hi, Jeremy Simmer, People for Fair Trade Network opposed to the World Trade Organization. Now, a number of people have already spoken tonight about what happened on Capitol Hill on December 1st. I just wanted to add a couple of comments. By the time the protests were ending, as one young man testified earlier tonight, the protest consisted of about 200-300 people singing Christmas carols, making circles of leaves in the streets and giving gifts of leaves to the police officers. Then, of course, they were dispersed with one of the largest barrages of concussion bombs, tear gas, and rubber bullets I witnessed during the entire week. Now, immediately afterward, I was getting ready to leave. I was sitting and observing the entire thing from just about 20 feet away from the police lines inside a car. I saw Nick Licata there and also Brian Dordowski doing a great job of trying to keep things cool. When it was all over, a young man who appeared not to be part of the protest approached the line of the National Guardsmen that had taken the intersection and was sprayed in the face from about 2 feet away. After just 3 seconds of maybe standing nearby the line of National Guardsmen, he fell over face forward onto the street, spread eagled, and was completely motionless for about 3 minutes with his face on the asphalt. Now, luckily in the car that I was in, we had a cell phone. We called 911. I told the dispatcher what happened. They said they were going to put me through to the Seattle Police Department. I said, I'm sorry, that's not acceptable. And they said, okay, we'll put you through to the fire department instead. Now, the dispatcher mentioned the fire department and mentioned the state patrol. I'm not sure which dispatcher I got second. But the person I spoke with, again, I quickly explained what the situation was, that there was a man who was completely motionless for 3 or 4 minutes face down the street. And the dispatcher said, I'm sorry, there's nothing that I can do. They're in a combat zone. We cannot send anyone in that is a combat zone. I'm not exaggerating. That's the exact language that the dispatcher used. Now, coincidentally, a few minutes, just about half an hour before, someone had a medical problem on the street that appeared to be completely separate from the demonstrations. It probably didn't have anything to do with anything. An ambulance did come in to the very same, within, in the same area where this man was sitting motionless for 3 minutes. Now, the good news is he got up and walked away. But the bad news is he could have been asthmatic and he could have had some very serious health problems. Now, this leads me to my question for the council, which is, how many people were denied medical treatment during the week of the WTO? I've heard and read allegations, lots of allegations, that people went to hospitals on First Hill during the major protests on the 30th and the 1st and were denied access. How many people were denied access? And that, for me, begs the larger question of what is the city of Seattle willing to do to its citizens to ensure that an undemocratic, unaccountable organization can meet within the city limits. Thank you.
I think we went out of order. Are you Jennifer? Is Bob Barnes here? You would be next, followed by Max Beery.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Strait. I work at Tenzi Momo in the Pike Place Market. I addressed you last week, and I made a point of coming here late tonight to make sure the people who hadn't spoken would have the opportunity to speak before I did again. Well, first of all, I think I'd like to bring up the business in the market. I was there in the market all 4 days of the protest. I can tell you we lost 18 business hours, and we had to close because of the protest and because of direct interaction with the protesters and the police right in front of our shop.
not to mention all the loss of business when we were open. I can tell you that after Tuesday night, I went home and I made it a point to stay away from the protests because of what had happened to me on Tuesday night. And I watched on the news people openly being invited back down to the market to come shopping on Wednesday. There was a no protest zone. It was safe. It was a good place to be. But that afternoon, Wednesday night, I watched the police throwing tear gas canisters inside the promenade of the market. I watched a group of protesters sit down in front of the Flying Fish stand and be bombed there. I watched over the next week as Jack's Fish had to clean out all of their fish tanks and throw away all of their shellfish because it was contaminated. And I watched as my friends at Corner Produce threw away half of their produce because it had been contaminated. So I think a lot of the involvement in the market was your own damn fault. But Tuesday night, when I left work and I walked up and I saw what was happening, I was inspired to pray. That's all I can say. I saw a lack of peace and I saw a need for it. And I knelt down and I started praying. You have the photographs there. Do you see anyone in those pictures behind me? Is there anyone around me? Is there any other reason they should have been throwing tear gas at me? And after they did tear gas me, I got up and I left. And I walked away. Mea culpa. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Mea culpa. I knelt down and started praying after being tear gassed. But I went to another police line and I knelt down and I started praying. And a police officer took aim at my face and shot me from less than 10 feet away with a pellet gun. I have 3 broken teeth. I cannot close my mouth all the way. I can't chew food properly that isn't soft or hasn't been cut into bite-sized pieces. Who's going to pay for this? Haven't I paid enough? I don't know what kind of recourse I have here. I don't know who's going to help me. But I know that I've had 3,001 people come into the market and tell me how sorry this is, or how sorry they are that this happened to me. But what is going to come of this? What's going to come of me standing here in front of you and telling you what happened? What are you going to do? The people that I helped bring into office, how are you going to help me now that I need you the most? And how are you going to help the rest of these people in our community who have been wounded not only physically, but I can tell you Thursday after the last city council meeting that we had, I was walking through the market and 2 officers who I do not know and do not recognize from the market, and I've been there for 2 years, I know most of the market cops, started walking towards me. I stepped away from them. Just, I don't know, fear, whatever. I took a step away from them, and as soon as I walked away from the group of people that I was talking to, those 2 officers stopped me and told me that they recognized me from the city council meeting of last Wednesday, and they wanted to hear the rest of my story. So I told them the rest of my story, and the woman sat and looked at me and shook her head and said, you know, I have a really difficult time believing that the non-violent weapons, of which I still have bruises and 3 broken teeth from, could be capable of that kind of damage, especially being used by trained officers. And the other officer looked at me and shook his head and said, you know, we're people too. You need to practice compassion towards us.
Max Beery, Hillary Funk, I guess it is, or I'm sorry, I can't quite read it, and Peter Cerny is number 124. Is Max Beery should go first if he's here? Go ahead.
Well, first I'd like to apologize to everybody. I don't speak well in front of crowds. And I'd like to apologize to all of you because I wasn't downtown during the 30th, the 1st, or the 2nd. I did get down there on the 3rd. To identify myself, in a little less than an hour here, I was born on Capitol Hill 52 years ago. And thank you. And I am a nurse at Harborview. I have been at Harborview since 1972. I've worked decades alongside of the police, decades alongside of the fire department. I'm proud of working with the fire department. My first direct involvement with all this was Wednesday evening. I worked 5 12-hour shifts. Wednesday evening, I get off work about 7:45, riding my bicycle home. I live at 18th and Pike Street. Drive down Broadway, turn the corner up Pine, and there were, I can't even count how many police I saw. At Nagel, which is about 50 feet from Broadway, a little side street, the corner of where the foot zone is and the tennis court, were these armored vehicles. And behind that was this policeman all the way up to the precinct up on 12th. I kept riding my bicycle, went past the armored car, still going up, and I said, well, gee, I'm in my hospital scrubs, my stethoscope, they must know I'm a nurse at Harborview or something. And no one said anything to me. I got up just past Kentucky Fried Chicken, and the police there all started pounding on their shields and this stepping. And I thought, uh-oh. I have to say I was given a warning because I saw a couple of these sticks, they're not nightsticks, they were, this long, come up at me. Yeah. And so I started to cut across the Kentucky Fried Chicken parking lot, and that's when I got sprayed at. I fell off my bike, drug it to Pike Street, and it took me about another 45 minutes to get home. I live at the dead end of Pike Street. My wife is totally freaked out by then. And last week she called in a panic because I waited outside till after 9 in the rain to get into the library and then didn't get home till 1 in the morning. She called the police knowing that, but she was afraid to call the police. I've got so many random thoughts here, but I do have a couple questions. I haven't heard any statistics of what kind of crime was going on in the rest of the city that week. Anything. Was the crime up or was it down? Because there was no one watching the stores. If it was down, maybe we need fewer policemen. If it was up, shame, 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 I have some concerns. One of the reasons they would not let me off work at Harborview, because I asked months ago, was because they were expecting 100,000 people in town, and they knew that we would have a lot of casualties up there. There were very few people actually showed up at Harborview, and that kind of concerns me, because what I was seeing on the TVs at work there were people unscrewing bottles and pouring it on faces of there should have been some real serious stuff there. And I have a concern. Someone brought it up earlier about for all the people released from jail. I'm wondering if there was a casualty we don't know about. Will we know about?
Hillary is 123. Peter Cerny. Are you Peter?
Hillary went home.
Beg pardon?
I'm Peter, yeah, Hillary went home. I'd like to cover a few points. Thanks everybody for sticking it out. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm outraged by Assistant Chief Joyner's remark to the effect that the cause of most of the problems at the WTO was the level of violence local protesters were either willing to carry out or condone. I don't know if you saw that. And to me, that shows that he's either egregiously unwilling to take responsibility for his department's actions or dangerously out of touch with reality, and either way is unfit to be chief, which he will be, replacing Stamper, or even in the position that he is in now. I'm also wondering what kind of training the police are getting in the psychology of crowd control, because they must have known that not everybody at the protests was going to be a dedicated, nonviolent protester. And it should have been obvious that some people were going to respond violently. And I did see windows broken 2 weeks ago Tuesday. And all the windows I saw broken were immediately after a barrage of tear gas and concussion grenades. In fact, at first I had thought that it was the grenades that had broken the windows. It was an immediate response, you know, and to me that shows poor planning. And I'd also like to say that it seems like the First Amendment is on really shaky ground here when a group of 30 or 40 people breaking windows legitimizes the use of force on 30 or 40,000 peaceful protesters. And the violence resulting from that use of force legitimizes the declaration of a state of emergency that effectively suspends civil rights, not only in the no protest zone, but all over downtown Seattle. I was with the labor march on Wednesday, December 1st, and I saw no violence, no property destruction, nor did I hear any reports. We were 3 blocks outside the no protest zone at 2nd and Seneca, I believe, when we were, with little or no warning, tear gassed. And to me, up until that point, it was a problem of traffic control. And it rapidly became a completely chaotic situation. I don't think the police had any sense of what would happen when they fired on a crowd of 2,000 people. It was downtown during rush hour, and after the tear gas cleared out of my eyes and I could see, I was on First Ave, and I was treated to the incredible sight of tear gas going off on First Ave during rush hour, people in their cars driving through. There was no sense of what would happen when the police did that. Thank you.
Marshall, 125, Marshall Balak, I guess?
Yeah, got it.
Okay, and 126, Kenneth Meyer, 127, Patrick Lemoine.
Hi, my name is Marshall Balak. I've been here for 7 hours already. It's kind of a very surreal experience. I'm a small business manager downtown, and I'm a Capitol Hill resident. I've lived in Seattle for my entire life also, so yeah, I like my city. I also want to, regarding small businesses downtown, I don't quite see what all the stink is about. A, we took some hits, but we can swallow it. It's not that big a deal. B, if you run a good business, people need to buy their presents anyway. They'll be in, don't worry, it's okay. And C, the events downtown did raise awareness regarding small, independent local businesses, and I think we're going to actually prosper after this, so nice. Yeah, I had a lot to say about my experiences downtown. You know, I was protesting all day Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and all that, but everybody said things, so I'll move on. Now that it's over, however, it's time to work through established means like we're doing tonight to figure out what happened, what really happened. No history rewriting like I'm seeing from Mayor Schell's office. It's time to figure out who is in command, or to figure out if there was a lack of command. What I saw on Capitol Hill on Tuesday night, not Wednesday, but Tuesday night, showed a lack of command, also Wednesday. It's time to forgive if necessary. It's time to make sure that my rights as a Seattleite, as an American, are never again so grossly mistreated anywhere in Seattle, and especially in front of my own house. It cannot happen again. I've read Richard Conlin's questions that need to be addressed by the newly formed OPA, and I'm actually very, very impressed by what they're asking. They're well thought out, and I feel they address many issues that I have. I have a couple more, however. I would like to add one pertaining to curfew zones and constantly changing laws. Why wasn't the public properly informed of the zones and laws? When I walked downtown on Wednesday morning, I was never informed of any no protest zone, nor any gas mask ban, neither by the cops who searched me when I entered downtown, nor by any signage anywhere. I feel that's inappropriate. How can I obey laws if I don't know what they are, if they're always changing? I'd also like to see Tuesday night on Capitol Hill looked into more. The police pushed protesters up Pine Street past Bourne, which was the edge of the no protest zone, and well up into Capitol Hill, firing tear gas canisters 3 blocks away from the line into people, into bars, into coffee shops, underneath cars that were stalled because of the protesters in the streets. You had no choice but to be tear gassed. I walked out front of my house and I was tear gassed. So I'd like to make sure that's looked into. Man, 3 minutes goes fast. So thanks guys for sticking it out tonight. Thanks everybody. We're gonna keep doing this forever. This is great.
Kenneth Meyer here, Patrick Lemoyne, Craig Trago, Jennifer Hall. You are great.
Most everybody here has said pretty much everything I had to say, so I'm going to cut to the chase of my conversation of what I wanted to say here. Quote, Seattle police have no interest in arresting the anarchist right now. Kathy Gertson on Como 4 News, 12/6/99. What gives here? I don't understand. The Seattle police would rather arrest 500 nonviolent protesters who are exercising their constitutional right to free speech and assembly than 20 or 30 juvenile delinquent vandals that did over $1 million in damage and took over a building for almost a week. On Tuesday, November 30th, the police had well over 5 hours to organize a small force of regular uniformed officers go in and find and arrest these vandals. I was there at the protest. I saw them. They were blatantly obvious. I don't know why the cops weren't there. Even if they only got a few of them, they would have done so to the approval of the crowd. The few times I saw the violence happening, the crowd was booing them. They were trying to get them to stop, pleading, begging, whatever. Please stop doing this. That's right. After that, they had almost a week to get them in the building they took over. I think we all saw on TV the news on the trash that's taken over that building. Anyway, I hate to say it, but the only logical conclusion that I can come up with is that not only do the Seattle police have no interest in arresting the anarchists, but they support them and their actions. This conclusion not only explains the police attitude towards the anarchists, but also the protesters. The violent actions of the anarchists, pretending to be protesters, allowed the police the excuse to become violent with the non-violent protesters. I hope this is not true, but I believe you judge a man not by his words, but by his actions. I believe this to be as true on a group level as on an individual level. What I saw the week of the WTO and other events in the past, I hold their actions suspect. We employ the police to protect and serve we the people. This does not mean just the elite, but the businessmen, the workers, the students, the poor, and the protesters, not vandals or some hidden agenda. Quote, the WTO should now, quote, the WTO should now be held in countries with military governments, unquote. Deputy Police Chief Joyner. I have a 4-month-old son. Please don't let my son grow up in a police state or under a military government. I don't think we're quite there yet, but the attitude is definitely there. Thank you.
Craig Trago is 128. Jennifer Hall, 129. Dennis Moynihan, 130.
Hello, my name is Craig Trago. I don't have a history of protesting or activism. However, the events I witnessed the week of November 29th persuaded me to participate in a march downtown on Capitol Hill Thursday night, where I have lived, and spend a night at the jail in support of the political prisoners, as well as write this. On Tuesday, November 30th, I spent the afternoon downtown to observe and photograph demonstrators. At no time did I feel threatened or my personal safety compromised. In fact, the behavior of protesters which I witnessed, who attempted to secure businesses by creating either human barriers or adhering banners to damaged storefronts, emphasized the peaceful intent of 99% of these participants. And concerns for my personal safety only materialized upon witnessing officers wantonly ejecting a variety of chemical agents at demonstrators, seated or otherwise, business people, tourists, residents, elderly, and children. I have never personally observed such shocking brutality and abandonment of civilized behavior by an institution whose purpose is to protect and serve. I found such behavior analogous to military agents in communist nations, ones we eagerly condemn for their neglect of human and civil rights. Unfortunately, such infringement did not conclude on our streets, and by December 30th, an estimated 500 citizens had been incarcerated. I believe as a community, we should offer our most sincere gratitude to every person who suffered any abuse, which there is no doubt took place, by individuals representing or part of an archaic department known as the correctional facility. And at the very least, it be determined this city financially responsible for any civil or personal damages incurred by individuals during this event, those same individuals who peacefully protested on all our behalfs against an organization whose agenda and policies are questionable at best and likely not in the interest of our future as one healthy living planet. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Hall, Dennis Moynihan, then Jan Mangan, I guess it is, and then Kate Halton.
I'm Dennis Moynihan from Boston. I came here to work with Direct Action Network to confront corporate globalization as manifested by the WTO, to shut down the Ministerial, and to open up a discussion about corporate globalization. And we did succeed in those goals. The victory was not sweet, however, as one of my roles here was to do outreach to the media, which was very hard to get the word of the peaceful protesters out to the mainstream media. Also, other roles that were forced upon us were first aid, as we took care of people at the Independent Media Center for tear gas, pepper spray, and all the other array of suffering that went on in the streets, as well having to switch gears from doing media work to doing mounting a human rights campaign. What happened at Sandpoint, at the Regional Justice Facility in Kent, and in King County Jail most notably, was extraordinary suffering. People were subjected to outrageous brutality. And so I have here for you guys announcements from Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, and a letter from Amnesty International in London to Paul Schell, who I don't suppose he's forwarded that to you guys yet, but I have copies of it from them directly. And they are calling for a full inquiry. The eyes of the world are on Seattle right now. Every city or campus where someone has returned to from here, has the person or people are speaking to full houses about their experiences here. And I have spoken. Absolutely, this issue is not a local issue, and we recommend, as do these organizations, that a full independent people's inquiry be mounted with free of political corporate conflicts of interest, with full subpoena power. And I think I have a recommendation for you people to immediately prohibit the destruction of any documents at all, including the videotape. We have eyewitnesses from Sandpoint who say that the police were videotaping in Sandpoint, and perhaps it may be done as well in King County Jail or in the Regional Justice Center. Those videotapes must be obtained and secured as, for evidence. It's important for you to preserve not only the sense of community but also local assets, to finger who's responsible, namely the federal agencies that allowed this to happen, and as well the Seattle Host Organization members. Those are the people who should empty their pockets when the flood of lawsuits is coming your way, and not the taxpayers who will ultimately, as the city tears itself apart, or will be paying with their taxpayers to settle the suits that are going to be forthcoming. And there are going to be many suits, and they're going to be well documented, and they're going to overwhelm the court system here. So thank you very much.
Number 131 is Jan Mangan. Number 132, Kate Halpern. Number 133, James Inman. Number 134, something Kaufman, I guess Shan Kaufman. Are you Jan?
No, I'm Kate Halpern.
Okay, I guess Jan's not here. Let's go ahead.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm nervous and not used to speaking in front of such large audiences. I actually almost left today and decided not to speak, but I stayed here because I felt it was important for you to have to listen to these things over and over again, although it may be exhausting, because we had to experience them over and over again and have to think about them over and over again all the time. These things don't go away. I don't think there will be any comfortable thing to go back to after this point. We will remember this. We will not forget this, and it's not going to go away. I have a list of things that I experienced and or witnessed during the WTO protests. I saw and witnessed rubber bullets shot at close range, sexist, racist, homophobic attacks shouted at me and others by police people, pepper spray at close range, concussion bombs at close range, tear gassing at close range, all of these things in large doses, followed by illnesses by me and a lot of other people. Calls to 911 that were ignored by the people who answer them. Nowhere to run. The police did not help us. We did not know where to go. They were telling us we couldn't go here, but they did not know where we could go. We had nowhere to run. We were trying to get out of zones we were not supposed to be in, and were forced to stay in those places. We also lost our constitutional rights during this time, and I do not know who in particular is to blame for these things, but we are all very angered by them, and I hope this never happens again in Seattle or any other place. I sat in confusion as I saw the media show of WTO coverage, and I wondered where these people were live from and what sites they were showing, because I did not see them when I was out there protesting. The things I saw were much more horrific and frightening. I was grateful, however, when I saw the mayor appear on the television, only because I had never cared much for or against him. But when I heard him say that his main concern were those delegates, I knew that he was not concerned with us and the millions of other citizens that were caught in the crossfire. I also want to remind us all of things we've been talking a lot today about, the children that were there. I want to know who's going to answer to them when they're scared and frightened and need to turn to someone, and they know they're supposed to go to the cops, and those are the people that are supposed to help them, but they were also put in situations of fear by those same cops. And I hope to God that there is a firefighter around there somewhere for them to get help from, since obviously the police are not going to do that.
James Inman. Number 133 is James Inman. Thanks.
I was in the protests. I didn't get arrested, but a year before the entire protest, I was arrested for saying the F word. And I will not use that word in front of the council. I'm sorry. I will substitute the word forget for the word the F word, okay? So I was trying to go to the bathroom, and the bathroom door was locked, and I said, forget it. And this lady said, excuse me, and I said, I need to go to the bathroom. She says, your language. I go, you've never heard the word forget? How about forget you mother forgetter? You ever heard that word before? And then I ran across the street to find another bathroom, and she called the police. And this cop came up to me and said, let me see your license. And I said, what for? You're going to arrest me for saying the word forget? And he said, put your hands behind your back. And I got arrested for saying the word forget. So this is my open letter to Mark Sidran. You dysfunctional, retarded, mentally ill derelict. Demon scum, antichrist, spewing worthless, constipated balls of dung from your Funkenwagnall education. You're a liquid-emitting fart. You evil bastard. You're a clear-cutting, cigar-smoking, depraved lunatic with a machine replacement head. Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps and please hack off your own feet and eat them. You profit-seeking circus act. Your idiot gibberish fuels the dystopian nightmares cooked up daily from the industrial laboratories of death. the giant echo of no trickling down from overpaid, overfed lackeys. The Gucci overlords and conservatives have always been black-hearted demons, and all WTO representatives are their mutated, half-human, retarded stepchildren. You're incontinent pond scum. You spineless vegetable head of dead lettuce with the mental capacity of a Swatch battery, the cognitive skills of a pigeon, and the intelligent quotient of a dirt clod. A blood clot for a brain and a softened skull you can poke your finger in like a stick of hot butter. Those little rodent eyes like two shiny black BBs that never blink, gazing away into empty space, and a third eye on the side of the skull dripping ice knot, combing your hair over so as not to scare children. A dead third eye just above the right ear like a milky black protruding mole. You black magician and puppet master, trained by Aleister Crowley and raised by feral goats, turning Seattle into Nazi Klan outpost with David Duke's twin alcoholic brother at the controls. Your entire philosophy is a bunk corporate handjob, and all your heroes are evil. Ayn Rand is a walking brain hemorrhage. Rush Limbaugh is a whimpering, dehumanized thug. Ronald Reagan is a diseased midget steeped in chocolate slim fast. To sum up, my worthless friends, Mark Sidran is a plastic toad, a horrible scab-infected abortion, a demonic fascist, a pathetic worm with dogmatic sermons for an industrial cesspool, a space heater filled with human waste and cat hair, a fan of John Tesh, a corporate shill, a floating green turd in the punch bowl of life, and may bright yellow vitamin-fortified piss flow onto the door handle of his holy automobile.
James, your remarks will be part of the record of the hearing. Is Shan Kaufman here? I'm sorry, I can't quite read the first name.
That would be Shay, and Shay actually went home, and I'm next. I'm Nadia.
Go for it.
And since Shay already went home, he said that she can take her time, but I got to go first because my mom's waiting for me in the COC parking lot. Anyways, my name's Nadia, and I'm a 17-year-old high school student. I was at the protest Tuesday and Wednesday, and I just have a couple of questions. I have to sort of be fast. And then I want to tell what happened to me on Wednesday. I want to know why police completely ignored any questions that protesters asked them, why they kept this face, they just stared at us. They didn't answer any questions. They didn't give us orders to disperse. And I don't understand why they weren't human beings, I mean, if that makes sense. And I also want to know what's going to happen from these meetings. What's really going to happen? I mean, what is this the precursor to? And I'd also like to ask for completely transparent proceedings in regards to the investigations that are going to happen with the police that will hopefully be independent, and anything that you guys do. I would ask that citizens be allowed, representatives from Dan or anything, just normal people, media is allowed to go to those meetings and record for us, what's going on, not just the Seattle Times and the Post-Intelligencer, but by the way, because watching the news on Wednesday night, I just burst out in tears because that's not what happened. So what happened to me on Wednesday is I was at the protest, the steelworkers rally, and I was with the march that went up to 3rd and Pine. When we got to 3rd and Pine, we met with a police blockade. We hadn't gotten any warning, of you're entering into a zone where we don't want you to be anything like that. But we got there, and at where McDonald's is, at 3rd and Pine, there was a blockade or whatever, I don't know, I couldn't see up there, and I didn't hear any warnings, and there was suddenly a volley of tear gas in front of us, and then behind us so that we couldn't leave. And then as my eyes were shut and felt like they were bleeding, I was holding on to someone's backpack because I couldn't see. We were trying to disperse, peacefully without trampling people, and we got tear gas canisters fired right behind us, one every 10 feet or so. And this was at about 3 or so in the afternoon. There were people down there shopping, you know, from work. And we walked down next to the Moore Theater, and we eventually ended up running. And some of those people got herded into the Pike Place Market, which also got gas, as you've heard. But I saw people, you know, getting off the bus, people that had been walking around, whatever, completely, like, unknowledgeable citizens that were, you know, having symptoms. They were really confused. I told them what was going on. Police hadn't told anyone down there. And my friend ended up going to the hospital that night. She had severe symptoms, and I still am having symptoms, like that woman was telling you about the phlegm, all that wonderful stuff. I've been really sick, and every time that I see a sewer grate, I think that's gas. And I just want you guys to maybe have some idea of what it's like to wake up in the middle of the night sweaty and like freaking out, because that's what I've been going through for the last 2 weeks. And I'm not like some radical hippie. I'm a student. I'm like a normal person. I could be your sister or your daughter or your cousin. So please just keep that in mind. Thank you.
Number 136 is Nicole Bade, B-A-D-E, I guess.
Hello.
After that, 137, Kurt Higgins. After that, 138, K-A-L, whoever that is.
All right, Nicole wasn't here, so I'm taking her place. She went home as well. My name is Nordica. I'm a student. I'm a Seattle Public High School student, and I think that I can help identify some of the officers who brutalized citizens 2 weeks ago. They weren't real cops. They weren't neighborhood cops that you know. They were community cops, the new cop on the block. My mother and I have been asking City Council and the mayor for 3 months now why our new community police are soldiers of fortune who get a $5,000 bonus to join the police force. They are paid extra, a bonus, for having prior military training. These community police are funded by the Justice Department and Janet Reno. These community police have been hired to enforce illegal activities that further the city's urban planning agenda, and everyone on this council voted for it when they passed each of the 37 neighborhood plans adopted this past year. The National Cops Program violates national law because it buys weapons and equipment jointly with the Pentagon. The Cops Program endorses the use of military tactical equipment against American citizens. Peter Steinbrück's tracking program for the transient people was part of the COPS computerized tracking system that's to become part of all city employees' equipment. The knock and talks that are starting in the South Precinct are the cops going door to door to perform interrogations and gather information about persons of interest. All planned to be logged in the computer system so cops can do a threat analysis on private citizens. How much federal cops money was used for training and enforcing the state of emergency during WTO? My mother sent Mayor Shell and City Council 43 questions regarding every illegal action in my neighborhood, the Roosevelt neighborhood, by DCLU inspectors. Mayor Shell sent me back one paragraph admitting the DCLU lies. Then your neighborhood cops invaded 2 homes in my neighborhood with the bogus city inspection warrant Mark Sidron provided. You sent 9 cops armed with guns and a battering ram to search for bugs and rodents. Your cops detained 13 people for 3 hours while they searched their private belongings and read their journals and letters. Your friendly neighborhood Andy Griffith cops threatened to hogtie any of the residents who wouldn't shut up about calling a lawyer. My mother again wrote City Council and the mayor about this whole business-oriented city agenda that names people like me transients with a significant negative impact. It takes laws and ordinances and legislation to create a police state, and this city council has passed every unconstitutional law that comes their way. They pass laws with bogus definitions and laws that are clearly against certain groups of people. Shame on you. I stand with the people in the South End who are the next target in Seattle's war on the poor and the different. I rebuke council's power to create and arm soldiers to further their business interests, and I am officially withdrawing from all your COPS and HUD founders programs. You people have never answered my mother. I still want to know more about the noise ordinance written by Seattle cops and DCLU and passed by yourselves. That was designed to control the protesters. Shell had to veto its use against protesters, but it still stands as city law against us in our neighborhoods, And for the record, shared housing is not a boarding house. Thank you very much.
Kurt Higgins is next. Sorry, 137 is Kurt Higgins.
My name is Nikki Rapana. Hi, Jan. Remember me?
I'm sorry, are you Kurt Higgins?
No, I'm speaking for Kurt. I want to thank you for radicalizing my daughter. That was my daughter, Nordica. That was my speech, but I think she did a real good job. Okay, I'm here to talk about cops, community-oriented policing services. And I would like to know exactly how many of the Seattle police officers that were on the streets during the week of WTO who were federally funded under the cops legislation, the $8.8 billion of which Seattle received over $4 million in grants to train for pilot programs to test new enforcement procedures. This is what they did in my neighborhood. The Roosevelt Neighborhood Plan designated us their pilot program to test these new enforcement procedures. I have been before committee. I have written you letters. I got a letter back from Michelle that was a joke, a total joke. And now they're heading into the South Precinct. I watched it on the cable channel a couple weeks ago. You have a Weeds to Seeds program. You know what? Low-income people, different people, anybody who doesn't fit in the urban planning agenda are considered weeds. It's right in their paperwork. It's incredible to me. You won't answer. Why? I don't understand. I mean, these are legitimate questions that I've asked. I was so upset. I wrote the most angriest letter I've ever written in my life. 43 questions I wrote to the mayor. 43 questions asking what's going on here. Why am I called a transient? I've lived in Seattle for 2 years solid now. I'm not a transient, but you know, even if I was, do I want you tracking me? I don't think so. They're going into the South End, people. Mothers for Police Accountability really need our help right now in the South Precinct because they have all the money to do it. It's housing and urban development. It's called Weeds to Seeds. Weeds are the bad people, and seeds are the nice middle-class urban people who shop till they drop in these neighborhoods. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong.
Number 138 is initials KAL, I believe, followed by Craig Irwin, 139, Noel X, 140, Lisa Burke, 141. Are you KAL?
That's Cat, dude. KAT.
Okay.
I'm Cat, and I'm homeless, and I'm from the Capitol Hill area. And just got a couple questions to start off with. One, fuck, dude. I would like to know what's going on with the gas mask situation. Why it's going to be illegal to have a gas mask after the year 2000? Because, you know, during that time, I want to be sporting the gas mask because of all the past couple weeks, stuff like that. And I would also want to know what the council is going to do about the police now. Even 2 weeks after the protests and riots, I'm sitting there up on Broadway, and the cops are like, dude, you can't sit there, you're a protester, you're a rioter, you're a junkie. Dude, I'm not a fucking junkie. I may be homeless, I may be 17, you know, I may be like outrageous and shit, but you know, your police officers are still calling me a rioter, a junkie, and I was peaceful during most of the thing until I was forced to do what I had to do, you know, and it's wrong and outrageous that they're calling me junkies and freaking rioters and saying I'm doing all this shit when, you know, I wasn't, dude, you know what I'm saying? So I just want to voice my opinion in front of all these people. Yeah, I was gassed, I was a peaceful protester, then I was gassed, I was freaking beaten up, I was taken to jail, and you know, now I'm up here telling y'all. So if y'all see me on the street corner, ask for some money, kick down some change. Thanks.
Craig Irwin, Noel X, followed by Lisa Burke. Craig?
Yes, I'm Craig Irwin. I'd like to say thanks for everybody for coming out and for sticking around. And I'd like to say, and give my full support, thanks and congratulations to police, leadership for not using the real bullets, and I guess, probably owe my life to that decision there. And I'd like to say thanks to this council for reinstating my my right to free speech tonight. Thanks to the police for erasing the last drop of apathy from my mind during this event. And thanks to the media for dispelling the last of my illusions of what they have going on. I guess I have a couple of questions. Where I have a concern. I'm wondering if we are at risk of receiving any sanctions from the WTO for failing to put down the demonstrators. A question that I have, I find it outrageous that gas masks could be made a felony contraband. Next time, is it going to be bulletproof vests? That's going to be the contraband. And I think we need to think about what kind of rights we want to keep and what kind of rights we want to be able to have for the instant disposal, of the mayor whenever he feels that it's convenient for him. I was arrested. I spent 4 days down in Kent, and I'd like to give a sincere thanks to those people who stood outside the jail, and I can't tell you what that meant to us that were locked up when our spirits were low. And thanks to Dan as well, who also lifted our spirits. I was arrested at First and Broad. We were just funneled into an area, gassed repeatedly, shot with rubber bullets, repeatedly, like everybody else up here today. But never any warnings, and never were we given an opportunity not to be arrested. I was arrested with pedestrians. I was arrested with people who were trying to catch a bus. I was arrested with, 2 girls and a dog who were just there, and the police said that they were going to shoot the dog, and it's all our rights were suspended in jail. No phones, no lawyers. It was a maximum security situation. We were all held locked down all the time. I was let out for 1 hour the whole time I was there to walk around. The rest of the time I was in solitary, by myself for the most part, and that's the way to treat our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Noel X. Are you Noel? Followed by Lisa, then Stephen. I can't read that. Sorry, 142.
I was a conscientious observer for 5 days. I took a day off work, and I witnessed innumerable epicenter events, the crux of which should be apparent by now is we've basically been involved in a running attack on the citizenry by our fascist police. And I see the remainder of my time to Emma Smith here. She was in many of the same epicenters, and she can probably explain all the more eloquently than myself.
My alias is Emma Smith, and I'm a former organizer of Montana Anti-Racist Action. And some of the things that I witnessed and that I went through were outraging. I was peacefully marching on Tuesday with a bunch of demonstrators, part of the labor unions, part of church groups, I might add, too.
and people with children, elderly, crippled, and we had no warning, and we were gassed. And my friend and I wandered around sporadically. My friend was in a panic, and we were notified that we were trapped in the downtown area and we couldn't get out, and we were repeatedly getting tear gassed and getting whatever else thrown at us. And I would like to add, I did grow up in Montana, as I said, and I've been a resident in Seattle on and off for the past 3 years. And it's common in Montana for the youth to go through hunter and weapons safety. And what we learned is that there's no such thing as a non-lethal weapon. All weapons have the potential to injure and kill. Another thing that I would like to make known is that I have a friend in the Navy, and part of his boot camp training was that he sat in a tear gas chamber, and I told him about the illnesses that I have fallen to since getting tear gassed all week as I was taking pictures, volunteering with first aid, and peacefully demonstrating, and he said that that shouldn't have happened. If we were tear gassed with the stuff that the police and city council and our lovely mayor said that was thrown at us, if that was true, then none of us should be sick. But like many other women, I got my period immediately afterwards, and the only health problem that I've ever had is that I have problems with my reproductive system. And I want to know how much further that's going to damage it, because I'm already scared that I can't have children. And also, I haven't been able to digest food since the week of WTO, and I've lost a considerable amount of weight, and I've been sick. I've been throwing up bile. I've been throwing up stomach acid. I have headaches. I've had nosebleeds. I got dizzy at work yesterday and fell to the ground. It was embarrassing, and I had to leave work early, and I can't afford that. And I want to know who's going to pay for all this. Another thing that I'd like to make known, and I know my time is up, but I personally don't give a shit. I'm going to finish until I'm done. A lot of people are saying that the anarchists are to blame, and yes, I was an anarchist in high school. I'm not now. But the thing is that that's just one little thing that our corporate government and the media that is run by our corporate government is taking to divide us all, when in actuality we all may have a lot of differences and we don't support everything that each other's standing up for, but we do have one thing in common, and that is that we are fighting against corruption. And how can we fight corruption? By obeying it. In order to fight corruption, you have to rebel against it. That's the only way to fight corruption. And that is one thing that the anarchists are making known, that I support them for, and I have no problems with them as far as them supporting that. Yeah, they might have done a few things that I don't agree with, but other than that, I do support their main cause. And in support of that and solidarity for everybody else, I wear my mask that I wore in tradition of anti-racist action demonstration. The battle may be over, but the war has just begun. Just because we got WTO to stop their meetings made known publicly doesn't mean that they're not going to meet in secret. And another thing...
I'm sorry, thank you, but it's getting late. It's midnight. Thank you. Let me do another reality check. We've now heard since the first hearing in City Council chambers last week, by my count, 323 witnesses. We've gone through 17 and a half hours. The people at this table have been listening, and we're going to go on. But to the extent that people can make it easier for all of us, it'd be wonderful. If you wanted to fill out one of the forms rather than speaking, we can do that, and it'll get us home earlier. But we're here to listen. Let's go ahead. Lisa Burke, are you here? Stephen, I'm sorry I can't read this name. Inlaxberg, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. It's a lot better than Stephen whatever the last time you mentioned it. And I won't take that personally, Mr. Compton. Thank you to the few dozen of you who still remain, the tried and the true, and the ones who are out here actually trying to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Obviously, you have heard
300 plus people. You have heard 17 hours of testimony. Something bad happened in this town, and the mayor is not willing to stand up and take accountability for it. The police chief has decided to step down, which I do applaud him for. So that leaves us with you. Since we have no real reaction or recourse with Mr. Schell, I would ask him to resign. I doubt he is going to. We leave this up to you. Originally, I had come in and wanted to speak about the experiences that I had experienced, but they mimic pretty much everybody else's. I was at the wrong place at the wrong time. I lived downtown. I got gassed. I got sick. I missed a day of work. I got a parking ticket. I ain't paying it. I ain't even going to go to court because I ain't taking another half day off work. So if you guys want to suspend my license, go for it. I'll walk. What I think has been the most upsetting about all of this is that if at the end of what had happened, if the people who run this city had come on out and said to the citizenry, and especially to those of my neighbors up on Capitol Hill, and to my neighbors who live with me downtown, where our civil rights were taken away for 3 consecutive evenings, where I could not leave my own home, where I couldn't even go on out and get a glass of milk. Thank God I don't have children. What would have made all of this a lot easier is if at Friday, people would have said, if the mayor would have come on out and said, I screwed up. I made a mistake. I am sorry to all of you people. I am sorry that you had to endure what you endured. We haven't heard that. We've heard excuses. We've heard minimization, that it wasn't that bad. We've heard, let's blame it on the protesters. Let's blame it on the supposed Eugene anarchists. I'm sorry, I was down there, I couldn't tell the difference, okay? But I lived there. And if I'm going to get gassed on the way home trying to buy some milk, I can just imagine what other people went through who were actively out there trying to enforce their First Amendment rights. You did take away my Fifth Amendment rights, and that's the right to due process. You didn't give me any due process when you decided to take away my civil rights. You owe me an explanation in writing, not to the general, but to me personally. Because if you're going to suspend my constitutional rights, I want to know why from you specifically. And in closing, and I will respect that my time is up, this comment goes out to the protesters. If you want your freedom of speech to be respected, you also have to respect the freedom of speech of organizations you don't appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Terry Allred is number 143, number 144.
My spot, so over 100 people ago, so now she gave me hers.
Please, by my count, you've had 3 different chances to speak, and there are people here who have never spoken. If you insist on trying to hijack the meeting, we're not going to resist it.
I didn't
but I would prefer that the people who have waited hours and hours have a chance to speak.
Actually, I've been here 10 hours. Okay, I've been here 10 hours. I've watched over 20 people who spoke last week get up and speak. I'm under doctor's orders to get rest and relieve stress. If you like to go ahead and speak. This is
not the place to get rest and relieve stress.
Well, I want to get the stress off my chest. All right.
Go ahead, please.
If you'd like to go ahead and speak, you can come up here before me. But I really have been here over 10 hours, and I've watched a lot of other people speak. Okay, great.
All right. Would you mind going after these other people? Thank you.
But I would like to know why you're letting other people speak when they should have also honored the honor system, which you didn't seem to care
because
about.
they haven't spoken yet.
You know.
Terry Allred, Doug Ellis, please, and followed by Asphalt.
You just don't want to hear the proletariat, do you?
Terry Allred, Doug Ellis, Asphalt, Diana Collins Puente. Any of those people here? Robert Jennings, come on up. Let me give some more. Sarah Luthens. Okay, already spoke. All right, Mark Jurankich, Chris Lehman, Marcia Marley Higgins, Richard Hart. Those are all people who are coming up. Well, Doug Ellis is 144. Asphalt is 145. Illegible, absolutely illegible is 146. 147 is Diana Collins Puente. 148, Robert Jennings. 149 has already spoken. Mark Jurankich, you are?
Robert Jennings.
Go for it.
Hello, my name is Robert Jennings, and I work and live on Capitol Hill. On Tuesday, November 30th, I arrived at Seattle Central at 6:30 a.m., where a 7-ish nonviolent rally and march downtown were scheduled. Everything was peaceful until shortly after 10 a.m. downtown. This is when the violence started. Not the so-called violence the media keeps referring to that is nothing more than vandalism, but the physical assaults on demonstrators by police via rubber bullets and gas. This was presumably tear gas, but we do not know for sure. We need to find out every type of gas that was used, how much, and where. After this is when you started to hear glass break. Almost immediately after hearing glass break, you also heard demonstrators yelling nonviolence to try and maintain the peaceful protest as planned, despite the violent aggression the police have already shown. I was gassed numerous times on Tuesday the 30th for nothing more than caring about democracy and our planet. Both the WTO seem to consider a joke. This seems outrageous to me. I had taken the streets for causes I believed in many times before. Once even having been arrested as a minor and sent to federal jail during the Gulf War, there I was treated like crap for nothing more than having said happy birthday to Dr. Martin Luther King in a post office that had a neighbor recruiting office inside. Yet I had never been gassed until November 30th. The declaration of a civil emergency was not even close to justifiable. For the amount of people in the streets, this was about as peaceful a group as you could have ever asked for, especially when the police had attacked him all day long. What was the reason for the curfew? Was this a test for a possible Y2K problem? If so, was it a federal test? And is that why the Pentagon was here? If not, then what? We need questions answered. Thank you.
Sarah, please go ahead. I realize you were speaking for someone else. You were reading a statement for someone else.
Right, thanks.
She's number 149. Mark is next.
My name is Sarah Luthens, and I'm with a number of different groups, the Seattle Progressive Coalition, Out Front Labor, Queers Fight the WTO. I also haven't had dinner, so I'll try to be as concise as I can and appreciate your attentiveness through these many hours. As a labor leader, I want it to be known the immense gratitude and appreciation that much of the labor community has for the youth who demonstrated, particularly the environmental and the direct action network youth. I think labor brought a lot of credibility to the WTO protest, but it was the young people particularly who took the risks. And there's a lot of appreciation for that, and the direct action network people of all ages are the ones who shut down the WTO. And there's a lot of gratitude in the labor community for that. And in fact, I'm going to recommend that labor do some fundraisers for the direct action network. I also would like to pay particular appreciation to the Firefighters Union, as we all feel. I appreciate being able to speak with you tonight. Of course, I'd like to affirm much what has been said, but it would focus on three main items. One, I'd like to encourage you to really reconsider whom you vote for President of City Council. Of course, the conventional wisdom holds that Margaret Patriot will be elected to this position. But again, to really consider what message this would send to a large portion of our vocal, energized citizenry. You know, voting for Pageler would only serve to inflame and escalate an already heightened sense of conflict and betrayal. You know, we have some wonderful alternatives on the council, and I especially want to thank Nick Licata and Peter Steinbrück for all of your wonderful work. My second point is my specific question I encourage the WTO Accountability Task Force to take up is what was the role of Mark Sidran, the city attorney, in all of this? He was strangely invisible somewhat during the WTO. And what legal guidance did he give to the mayor and the police with regard to the no protest zone, the curfew, the use of excessive force, and the militarization of the police, and the guidance he gave with regard to arresting all these people for the failure to disperse and, you know, blocking pedestrian pathways. We know that he killed the deal to get the protesters out of jail earlier than what they got. And of course, I've got pages and pages and pages of names and addresses from tonight of people who want to see him out of office. So after due process of Mark Sidran, I certainly encourage you to censor him at least in addition to providing mechanisms for his recall. And thirdly, I just want to appreciate especially Councilmember Gossett being here representing King County. I think there are many instances of torture in the jail, which I've delineated quite a bit on email, and I don't want to get lost in all this. The accountability we need to have of the jail officials and the King County Police. I'm helping to raise a 5.5-year-old boy, and of course, as he's looking at the newspapers, he asks us, why are the police sticking out those guns? And it's a grim time that we're facing, and I think it's important that we exercise civic leadership in the best ways possible. So please reconsider whom you vote for City Council President, and answer specific questions with regard to Mark Sidran and his role, and remember to focus on accountability of the King County jail guards and police. Thank you.
I'm told that number 146 is Sage, S-A-J. If Sage is here, you can take a turn. We're up to 150. Mark Geranjits, I'm sorry, I can't read the writing. Followed by Chris Lehman, who I see is here. Do you want to go ahead, Chris? And please.
Thank you all very much for being here. I think it really speaks a lot for your commitment to trying to clear up this issue. I think I have something new to say. Much has been said about the performance of the police and of the mayor's office. But amidst this, I think there has been a loss of focus on the performance of another institution, namely the City Council itself. Resolution 30100, under which your committee is operating, is really conclusory. It contains language which really lets the City Council off the hook. It makes it sound like a bunch of other organizations outside the city government got us involved in this. And at the very beginning of this hearing, one of the members of that committee said the City Council was not involved in bringing the WTO to Seattle. Now, I would have thought that that was something that your committee is going to look into, and it's not going to make up its mind about this. And you need to investigate what role the City Council itself had throughout this process. And in particular, the problem is that in 1998, the City Council, along with other city agencies, began to erase all of its emails after 45 days. So the emails that were written in between the City Council and the mayor's office or the various trade groups in 1997, 1998 are almost certainly erased. We may never know what role the City Council, either as a body or as individuals, played in bringing the WTO to Seattle. But I know that you'll do your best to look into this. Please don't jump to conclusions and assume that the City Council had no role. In fact, it strains credulity that with Governor Locke and Ron Sims and the mayor very publicly supporting this, that the City Council members were not aware of it. A second item is that this issue, relations between the city and the county, the port, the state, and the feds, is going to be a key topic of conclusion at a City Council retreat that will be held out of town